Just give me a minute because we need to make sure Marcin's in here as he's one of the new hire that needs to hear this stuff.
Of course.
Okay, we're gonna start. And then whenever Marcin gets in here, he can check out the recording afterwards. So for now, let's start muting our video. So Artie, Jessica, Joyce, and hey, Marcin, you're here. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start turning off or stopping our video so that we can have focus bandwidth. This way, it's not lagging the presentation. Okay. And then what I'll do is I will start sharing my screen. Share Miro. All right. Cool. I just want a confirmation from someone. You can see my screen right now with this man going hoo hoot, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Cool. So welcome to the Slots Masterclass. And in this presentation, I kind of want to share my 10 years of experience working in the slots industry with you guys. What I want to do is cover some of the basic philosophy in terms of design thinking, what to look out for when designing slots, and some fun creative ways to improve your process as well as your iteration speed. And what I want to cover within this hour is I will try to outline everything in different groups over here. We're going to cover the overview about slots. We're going to cover understanding about process and thinking when creating slots, as well as the individual aspect of slots, like the anatomy of slots, the background, framing, about the icons, and different techniques to create the symbols, the wild icons, as well as the royals. We might not cover everything today, but what I want to do is just focus on the most important stuff. And we have a couple of new hires within our team. So we have Wisney, we have Tedawan, and also Marcin. So this will be a really great overview for you guys to kind of dive into the world of slots and what it is all about. Okay. And so a little background about me is I used to work in the Xbox concept gaming industry, where you will work on a game for about like a year or two, just grinding and concepting the same things over and over again. I worked on an MMO and then a first-person shooter that was trying to go after Halo. And so you can imagine my day just drawing concepts of like sci-fi roads, sci-fi signposts, sci-fi mailboxes, and it was just driving me insane. Like the repetition of the same stuff over and over again. And then it wasn't until I joined the slots industry. Around 2009, I joined WMS, which is now Scientific Games. And there it opened a brand new world for me, because what was really fun about the slots industry is that you could do everything. Like you could design symbols, you can do UI, you can do logos, you can do animations, think about VFX, transition, motions, and stuff like that. It was just like a breath of fresh air. No longer am I working on one design like over a course of a year, but you're designing multiple different aspects of a story within like a couple weeks. In fact, most of our slots production is usually wrapped up within 3 months or 4 months, all right? And then you move on to another theme. so that there's constantly new ideas, new concepts, and new design. Just made me fell in love with slots. Now, there are a lot of different expectation as to like what slots is versus what the traditional video game demographic is. So let's kind of dive in so that we can kind of understand what is slots all about. Whenever I'm making a hire or I do an interview, I tell the candidates that slots is like a storybook. It is like a graphic novel, but for more for like your mom and your grandma, right? Think about all the different icons, all the different stories that we try to tell. Like all this kind of somewhat like fantasy, somewhat like a little escape, a story for the older generations that they can plot down in a chair and play. Each of the icons, the symbols, the background all tell a part of the story, and they're constantly moving, right? It's very simple to play because all you gotta do is press a button. But as you're pressing a button, how do you create engagement? How do you create something exciting so that when they're squinting at it, when they're seeing things spinning and landing all these different icons, they get a kick out of it? And that's what we're gonna cover as we continue to progress. But most importantly, you guys need to be aware that your demographic is not your stereotypical like 20 years old to 40 years old male. Most of the slots demographics are middle-aged women and men, but mostly we lean towards the pink side of the industry. So lots of female players, and they're usually 40 to 65 years old. Now, the market is constantly changing. We're now bringing in more male players. There are different types of slots out in the industry that focus more on the hardcore male players. However, generally, you want to think about designing games for your mom and grandma. And a good way to think about it is this: is as we're kids, right? If you put a drawing and then your grandma and mom likes it, they put it on the fridge. That's generally a good thing. But if they scratch their head and they don't understand what this is, then it's a good reflection for you to kind of think about your artwork. So you will see a lot of advertising expectation like this: sexy men, sexy girls playing slots. But as many of you have now experienced in Vegas, Macau, or in ICE, the reality is this: it's an older generation, okay? And I generally like to think of slots as an escapism for them because our demographics mostly from United States and also European countries. There, some of these people just never been out, never traveled to anywhere outside United States. Their best outside experience of other culture is actually Las Vegas. And if you ever been to Las Vegas, it's like a giant adult theme park. Nothing is, it looks like Europe, it looks like Venice, it could look like New York, but it's still pretty fake. And the 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 average player this is how I would frame like what they are like is it's like Betty from middle of United States. She works at a grocery store for 12 hours a day, and she just finished her shift. She's gone home. Her kids are already out of the house in college. She's about to get a divorce. Her life is kind of miserable, so she's playing slots to escape from her life. She has 3 shots of bourbon, one pack of 6-pack of beer, and now is playing your game drunk. That makes a big difference when you think about your audience, especially when you think about Betty, who is probably 55 years old playing your game drunk, because the excitement from all these icons, the spins, the sound, the flashes, the wealth that's just glimmering at you, that is the tunnel of light that they look forward to every single night. Right? So that's what we're trying to deliver. The older demographics can't imagine forms or simplify shapes, as well as stylization, as well as the younger demographics. So we tend to stay away from anything that's, the Japanese call it chibi, that's cute, anything that's like very heavily stylized, anything that's like flat, because we always want to pronounce and accent the forms and the story to them as well as possible. And then when it comes to the theme and schematic of slots, you're gonna find repeated elements over and over and over again. So sex sells, money sells, vacation sells, and fantasy escape sells. there's only like there's just like a couple stereotypical archetype for slots. You would have like the ancient Chinese themes, you have ancient Mayans, the fantasy themes, the sexy girls and sexy guys, the charging animals, and the stylized like money and glitters and jewels. Like those are your stereotypical slots.
Is it just me or I cannot hear Daniel anymore?
No, I also cannot hear.
Yeah,
Same
There
here.
are a couple themes that we always want to stay. Testing 1,
Daniel,
2, 3. Hello.
we couldn't hear like last 30 seconds.
Where did we end off?
I think that it was around where sex sells and stuff.
Oh wow, that's a terrible ending. Okay, let me stop my video, and then you can still see my share screen, right?
Yeah, we can.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
At any time that you can't hear me, just tell me here, because I won't be checking my Slack messages. Okay. All right. Still good?
Yes.
All right. Cool. So sex sells, money sells, fantasy sells, and ancient civilization, majestic animals and creatures and gods sell. Okay, and you will generally find the slot industry doing this type of things over and over again. Mayan, Chinese riches, like Zeus, Poseidon, goddesses, and like Chinese themes, and luxury like diamonds, cars, money, and romances. However, there are a couple of themes that we should generally always stay away from. Now, we're much younger in terms of our demographic to the actual players. So sometimes we'll bring a lot of aesthetic and new ideas. Like we want to do like, oh, let's add some sci-fi. Oh, let's do some really cool modern stuff. But always remember, these are the categories that don't do very well in our genre. And here are some examples. I worked on a game which is called Baron von Bacon from WMS, and we were going for this whole chibi style, like Tokidoki, right? Very flat, very cartoony, happy, everything. Everything has eyes and mouth. Like the gems have eyes, the fruits have eyes, and when they're dancing, they're all like chibi and kawaii and going yay, yay, yay. But my God, did this game ever bomb? Like it bombed so bad that I was like super embarrassed to work on this game. You can see it in the screenshot here. It's like super flat style, some cell shading, kind of like Japanese cartoons. And part of the research that we got back is they don't understand who the characters are. They thought that the pig was a cyclops. I was like, wait, where did you get the cyclops from? And it dawned to us that like these simple shapes, like this one simple eyebrow cutting across his eyes, like the older generation just couldn't get it. Like they don't understand what is that shape. They can't read any of the symbols here. So that's a big warning. Stay away from super cute stuff. You will see some licensed stuff like Tokidoki in the slots industry, and that's because they're just licensing it to take up a real estate space within the slots floor. But I doubt that it does very well. Okay, cartoony stuff like this, really stylized, wonky shapes, super cute stuff we want to stay away from. This is what we call slots for tots, so slots for toddlers, and it's actually illegal in the gaming industry to make things look too much like slots for kids. You always have to tone it up to make sure that it's aged up to the right audience. Now, sci-fi stuff, you will see Star Trek licensed games on the floor, and that's fine. But in general, sci-fi stuff about space, about robotics, about aliens, if not done properly, will not do very well in the gaming industry, right? Especially robots. It's not something your mom or grandma is really interested about. All right, so this type of stuff, stay away from. Now we do have really fun alien themes, like invaders from planet Moolah and players from planet Wombats, and those are done really tastefully with the right way to do it. Okay, so there is still a niche market for alien themes, but you gotta do it in a more creative way than your stereotypical alien with like black blank eyes. And here are the stuff that does very well, right? You can have cute over here as an example from Double Down, you can have cute, but it's gotta be rendered up. It's gotta have some attitude. It's gotta be well designed so that the characters and stories can reflect through the rendering. Your general, sex stuff sells, your Buffalo Mustang, and luxury goods, right? These are your stereotypical slots brands. Okay, and here are some more examples just to illustrate how handsome men and handsome women dominates the general slots art. Now, we in Play Studio do focus on creating stylized characters. We don't try to make always like sell sex. We don't make it obvious enough. But do keep in mind when you're designing characters or female male characters, try to give them more feminine appeals and give them more masculine appeals, right? Age them up and give them attitude, because that's what slots players are attracted to. A good example of sex sales is this game from WMS, right? This is Little Red Riches. You can see here they really make it like an adult theme where they add laces, they add tights to Little Red Riding Hood, just to make it fit suitable for our slots demographic. Okay, now if we want to do cute, we can do cute, and there are ways to do it. Always just try to think about designing cute things with lots of form and lots of volume. Describe your shape and describe the characters as best as you can. Don't leave any like stylizations on the art itself, because that's going to cause a lot of confusion. So stylizations are what I call, like, let's say double eyes, where the eyes are like super rounded and like collide together. Those are the type of things that players just don't understand. Here's some example from It's Magic from IGT. Like you can see, it's very much like World of Warcraft, but things are a lot more high fidelity. They feel like there's lots of volume, lots of rendering to describe their form. This is a good, cute style. Okay. This is a theme from also IGT called Keystone Cops. This is kind of like Pixar, right? It's cute, but you can see all the assets here are well rendered, easy to describe. And as I was saying earlier, you can do alien themes, but you just generally try to avoid crazy like aliens, like make it comical. Like this is a really popular game called Invader from Planet Moolah from WMS. And you can see here that even though it's flat cell shaded style, it did break some rules. However, the general design is easy to understand. Okay. And then I want to give you guys an example from Royal Charm Slots. This is from our first theme in Royal Charm Slots, which is the Asian Chinese theme. And we went through a stage of aging up the characters because it was getting to the point where it was too much like Slots for Tots, like Slots for toddlers. On the left side, we have the dragon that's super cute, super chibi-like, almost look innocent. Like it's like, hey, I'm so cute, come and hug me. And then we went through a round of revision where we aged up the character to make the golden dragon, the Chinese dragon, a lot more majestic. Like he can roar, he can scream. And this was the right approach. And we did see some numbers move after our second launch of RCS with this new iteration of the dragon. Okay, so when designing cute things, think about who the audience is. Don't make it too chibi or too cartoony. Okay, aim towards a little bit more mature, cute style. All right. So this is very relevant now to us as we're entering into the quarantine stage. But everything that you do in slots should feel wealthy. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm gonna try and turn on my video because I feel like the hand gesture needs to be shown. Boris, can you see my video? Like me in
Yes,
front of the camera?
yes,
Okay.
It's good.
Okay, cool. So when it comes to slots, everything should feel like it's worth $1 million. Like if you're drawing toilet paper, make it feel like $1 million. If you're drawing like a fried egg or butter, like it should feel like it's glistering. Not literally like this, right? But just think about the mentality of slots players. Like they're playing this for money. They're playing this to win. And you want to show exuberance, that excitement. So even if you're designing slots that have icons that normally would have rust or chips or things that will break, don't try to illustrate all those like nasty details. Try to give them some like level of pristine and polish, right? An example is what Wisney is working on right now. She's working on Wisney and Mervin is working on the Gold Digger theme with like miners, right? So you have axes, you have pickaxe, you have things that are usually a lot more weathered down due to the usage in real life. But you don't really want to draw in anything that's chipped, anything that has like stone cracks, anything that has like a lot of broken wood, because they don't feel very wealthy. So keep your designs clean. You can add a little bit of chips, but when you're rendering it, try to make them feel really polished up and like rich. Okay. In regards to the slots product itself, this is where I always tell the new artists that come on board, like, forget everything you've learned in art class about saturations, about depth, about lighting. Just break all of that rule. In slots, just crank up the saturation to the max. This is your color picker, okay? You don't want anything in this area here. They don't exist. Everything should be super saturated. Like even in the shadow should be in the saturation band right here. You can move a little bit over to desaturated tone for highlights, but in general, always go for super saturation. Now, if your lead and your manager does tell you, okay, this is way too saturated, let's dial it back down a little bit, that's a good thing. But avoid us constantly telling you, like, make it more saturated, make it more saturated, make it more saturated, because you're gonna hear that a lot in this industry. And here's why. Everything that you make should feel like it's burning your eyes, right? In the slots game genre, imagine you're sitting on a casino floor at a dimly lit location. And these bright lights are your stimulus. Like these neon lights give you that excitement. And slots companies compete with each other in terms of their displays. You will have tons of these neon lights vertically tall because they want to attract players from afar. And most importantly, you gotta remember now, your audience is playing your game drunk. And if you ever play slots drunk, it's actually a very interesting experience. These colors, it just brings out the happiness in you as you're seeing them spin. Slots is all about matching colors. It's like it's match 3, match 4, match 5. And if the colors aren't vibrant enough, you don't know what you're chasing after. You don't know what's the wealthiest icon that you should be looking forward to, right? That's why purposely we design slots games to be super bright and super saturated. So here are some examples of super saturated and high contrast. Now, sometimes we would do like dark themes that have vampires, Frankenstein, like here's some Walking Dead example. But even if the theme is dark and quote unquote evil, they still gotta follow the slots, the rules. Everything's super saturated, everything is bright, even the shadow is like saturated and bright. Like let's take a look over here. This Wolf's game, the shadow here is really bright blue, right? Over here in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you rarely see any usage of black. They use super saturated blue or dark red to punch out the contrast. Okay, here's some great examples from Playtika. Still following the slots style, even though it's like Frankenstein, everything is super colorful and bright. So remember, when you're designing slots, always keep things as bright as possible. Okay. I want to give you guys some examples of what good slots looks like and what bad slots looks like. Okay, a couple of you guys have probably worked on slots games from a non-slots manufacturer. People think that, oh, slots is so easy. It's just icons, right? You just draw a bunch of icons, put them together, make them spins, and you're done. But no, that's the curse that a lot of players or a lot of new artists enter the slots industry thinking that it is easy. It is not easy. Slots is a fine balance of colors, of contrast, of size, of dominance, of shapes and detail. And there's so much subconscious decisions being made that changes the way that a player sees the icons and sees the story. And here are two examples here, two groups, categories. I want to show you guys why. So this is what we call really bad looking slots, right? So in this eagle theme, here, everything is competing with one another in terms of shape. Like you got middle icons that is a circle. You got Royos, which is the lowest paying icon, that for some reason the developers decided to add a circle plate behind it. So if we look at this and just take a step back, it's just a bunch of circles with tons of details, and they're all generally blue. The things that contrast the most is like the red on the A and the green on the J. But then they're actually the lowest paying icon. Like the wild should punch up a lot more in terms of its color and saturation, and so should the eagle, because that's the focus here. Like this is the eagle theme, but they didn't do a good job of that. So this theme's like meh, like ugh. Well, let's take a look at Amazon WoW here. Like this is just a mash pot of mess here. You can't tell hierarchy apart from each other. If you squint at this, like you have no idea what is the most important icon you should be chasing after. Everything is competing with one another in terms of detail, in terms of like color dominance, in terms of shape, like it's all the same. Here, a common mistake that we see with, so we're getting some kids crying echo from the background. Can you guys check your mic if it's muted? Here we will see another common mistake in slots is people add too much black, right? So here we look at this theme, it's just like, ugh, it's gaudy, it's black, it's dark, it doesn't have the happy escape feeling, it doesn't have the saturation. Like, why am I playing this? It makes me feel really sad. And this Mayan Princess one, again, it's the same thing, too much detail everywhere. I have no idea whether this Aztec thing, like even though it's smaller in size from the cougar here, whether it's worth more than the cougar, but the cougar has a bigger size. All these details are competing with one another. All these colors are competing with one another. Now, let's take a look at these good slots here. Good slots art follow really clear, distinctive hierarchy. They have strong silhouette, strong colors for the most dominant icons, and they have strong sizes, which is what I'm gonna get into the next section. The dominance in the 4 Ds of slots: size, details, directions, and color. Okay, so let's take a look at this Rhino slots here. The Rhino slots theme is super clear and direct to the players. The game is called Charging Rhino or something like that, right? What are you chasing after? You're chasing Rhino. Look at the way the artistry is done here. They pushed all the middle icons of the animals back into the distance, so it kind of merged into the real frames here. By default, players know that Royals are the lowest paying. So, we don't pay attention to the Royals. But right here, Charging Rhino, what a great contrast. This orange, gold, right against teal, right? So if you squint at it, the only thing that stands out is the Rhino. Bear Hoss, another classic theme, focused on sex sells, is focused on sexy girls. And here we can immediately see the hierarchy. Like these Cars Sweet Royals are the lowest. The next step up is all the different icons, middle icons that describe the story. Then you have all these tall icons, the large icons with characters that tells you like, hey, this is what you want. You're chasing after me. Look at the way they done this Sticky Wild here with golden frames, lots of beers, beautiful girl. So the girls will usually be the highest icon, and then the guy followed by the beer. Right? And then lastly, I want you guys to take a look at, let's say Buffalo here. Buffalo is a classic. All the middle icons are pushed back, no frame. And the highest icon here is the buffalo. Large center stage, strong contrast against the Rio. And as it's spinning, you would just see this buffalo, the stack of it flying by. Right? So there's a lot of conscious design that comes to figuring out sizes, figuring out colors to help players easily understanding what is the highest paying icon the minute they sit down and playing this game. Okay, so good slots and bad slots. Now, before we dive into how to create slots of all the different functions and the different icons and stuff, I want to give you a quick rundown of slots anatomy. Okay, most of you guys already know this, but just a quick rundown of here. When we talk about real frame, all right, real frame, we're referring to the frame on the outside of the reels. This thing around the outside, that's the real frame. A real strip is this texture right here. A real strip goes behind the icons. It creates a mood. It helps punch the icon forward. A real divider is what goes in between each reels. It helps separate each of the vertical reels, so it's easier for the eyes to see when something matches. There are a lot of different ways to do the reel dividers, which we'll go into details in the next section. Backgrounds, all right? Backgrounds can split between free spin backgrounds and main game backgrounds, right? These are the backgrounds that goes behind the reel frame and also the general real estates. They help sell the mood and sell the feeling of the slots. And then you will hear this terminology a lot is icons or symbols. So these are the storytellers of the theme. These are the stars of the game. This is what players are chasing for. This is what we categorize them as icons. Icons can break into 3 different tiers. We will have low icons, which is the royals. We have middle icons or high icons, which are generally the storytellers. They fill the stories with meanings. Then we have trigger icons, or we would sometimes call them bonus or free spins. They're the most desirable icons, like free spins, wilds, or jackpot winning symbols. Okay. And then something really interesting for you guys to note is that in the legal gaming industry, real money gaming, when we jump from main game to free spins, is actually by law that we have to change everything, that the players need to know that they're in a different function, different payout mode. So at WMS, when we design free spin backgrounds, the real strip needs to change. The icons needs to change. Sometimes we would just flip them horizontally, or sometimes we have to change the colors in the background of the icons. And then also the real frame colors, the real background needs to change. In general, it just needs to make it feel like this is a different game mode, because some players are getting confused. It's like, hey, how come I'm winning more money? How come I'm losing more money in these specific mode? Okay. However, in slots, we have a lot more flexibility. In mobile slots, we have more flexibility. So we don't have to always follow the rules. It's based on the game designer's game design and decision whether they want to change any of the aesthetics in the backgrounds or the real strip. And by all means, you as the slots art designer can also voice your opinion, whether something doesn't read very well or you want to change the background so it feels more exciting. Welcome to voice those opinions out, okay? All right. I'm gonna skip the understanding the spec part because different studios do spec differently, but I want you guys to kind of hear me out in terms of process thinking. I'm gonna take a sip of my coffee here for a second. Now, those of you that work with me for about a year or more, and those that are joining the Orion team, you're gonna hear me say this constantly: process, process, and process. Because through process and the way that you think is the function in which you can repeat success. And we as an Orion team have a specific process, and this process is that at first we follow the 80 and 20 rule. Okay, so the 80 and 20 rule is like this: you should take around 20% of your effort to get 80% of the work done, right? And then the last 20% of the work actually requires 80% of your effort. And that's like the icing on the cake. So how do we make sure that the whole team and your process itself can function like that, where you're spending 20% of your effort to get 80% of the work done. That comes from a couple of things. First is the way you think about your work pyramid in terms of your observation, analysis, and execution, as well as some of the rough design process, what we call kit bashing and photo bashing, which I'll go into detail shortly right after. In our team, we always focus on observation and analyzation. Like this is the groundwork of most of your day. When you're designing slots icons, some themes, whether it's UI, logo, or animation, spend most of your time on observing, gathering references. Look at the references, figuring out what makes them work. Look at other people's artwork, trying to figure out what do they do to make it look great, right? Then once you gather a lot of these, a lot of your self-analyzation, all the references, then you can combine and connect the dots into a better picture of how you would execute your style or execute your objective. A lot of new artists that join a team right away when they get a task, they would just start drawing, they'll start sketching things, and they sketch and sketch and sketch and sketch, and they all come out with things that are unusable because they're not referencing, they're not observing, they're not downloading ideas that works in the industry. So focus first on gathering your references. Get plenty of references and start digesting them. Like what works, what will work for the theme, what will not work for the theme. So in this example, let's say we're designing Wizard Oz, the Good Witch, right? Look for what works and what doesn't, and then start looking at other people's work, and then start cutting and pasting your references into quick, rough samples so that we can start having visual communication with each other, right? Don't take too much time in trying to sketch things out and paint things when there's already references available that you can just start kit bash things together, cut things together to start the communication within the team, to start the brain juice, right? So once you have everything kind of sorted out, your references, then you lean into your reference. Find a couple good ones that you really like 1 to 3 really good ones that you think matches the theme. Then you execute on that, lean into it, like follow it closely, see how they've done their colors, the designs, the rendering, and that's the execution part of it, okay? Don't do this process where you start executing and drawing all these crazy ideas, and then we constantly tell you to go backwards and say, okay, look at more references, because then your pyramid is upside down, and then you become really unstable. It can collapse at any time. Focus most of your work on observation and analyzation. Execution is the last 20%, okay? As we're designing things, okay, this goes to everybody on the team, right? Always design things by considering it in its next larger context, right? I never, ever, ever want to see anyone post work like this. You're showing design in isolation. And this blindsides everybody on the team. It blindsides the artist that's working on it. It blindsides the manager and the game designer, because when we're looking at a white canvas with just some designs here, we have no idea how the design can correlate with the reels, with the background, with the other icons, with the other hierarchies, all right? So always show your design in context. And I can't stress this enough. Always show the design in context, right? And also, when showing the design context, don't just paste a couple icons and an empty reel, right? Put everything in there. Put the royals, put the middle icon, put the high icons, mix them up a little bit so to tell the whole story. This helps us kind of see how they interact with each other, right? Slots is all about the interaction and the hierarchy of the icons. And throughout your process, as you're working on rough to finish, this is the screen that you should be working on, the contextual screen where everything's all together. You can attach like a context screen, and then right underneath is probably like the breakdown of the individual icons, and those are fine, but always just provide this contextual view whenever you're asking for feedback, okay? Now there's a couple of things that when we're working on, you always want to use as techniques to help you get better at creating slots art. As you're drawing, Actually, let me take a step back. The reason why we created these little techniques is because our team generally wants to avoid something called the spoon feeding feedback or the treadmill feedback cycle, in which you're designing art, and then as the minute you're done art, you just slap it on, put it in Skype, put it in Slack, and ask for feedback, right? That's not autonomous, nor does it show your level of thinking. You want to be able to stop for a second and do your self-analysis. Ask yourself, does this look good? Does it follow the theme? And start using these checks, right? Squint at your work. When you squint at your work, it kind of tells you how the slots, icons, and work will look like when it's spinning. And if your work doesn't have a strong silhouette or a strong contrast and color, even if you squint, everything's just gonna blend in, right? So squint test, always squint test. And second, flip your image horizontally every 15 minutes. Every time you save, you should flip your image horizontally in your Photoshop, and then continue working from that flip version. And then 15 minutes later, save again, flip it again. Because when we put our artwork in the mirror is when you look at it with a fresh set of eyes. What I would do in Photoshop, and as a recommendation, is F1 in Photoshop is help, and nobody ever pushes F1 or ask Adobe for help, right? So change your hotkey to F1 to image flip horizontally. So you can quickly flip your image as you're working. And you'll find it really surprising. You'll be drawing this awesome looking character and you hit F1 and flip the image. It's like, oh, wow, like the eyes are warped and it's like faces are not aligned, right? That's because your eyes are looking at this image fresh, okay? And then before you submit things for feedback, take a step back, zoom out from on Photoshop and look at your icon design. Does the silhouette read? Does the colors read? Okay. Now, based on everything we just said, let's look at the examples again. The bad slot visual reference and the good slots, okay? This is another technique that I would personally use when I'm reviewing or looking at my own work, is I would create a grayscale image of my work and then use contrast, legacy, check on the legacy box and just increase the contrast. If your work doesn't stand out, like the silhouette and the colors, or create strong contrast, then you can immediately flag it and go back and edit it without having to go through like the feedback chain. Okay, here's what we looked at earlier, right? The ego theme, everything's all circles. Like there's no hierarchy here. There's no dominance in size or shapes. The Amazon theme, blah. It's just a mess of shapes. The dark theme that we're looking at with when I was saying like it's too black. Like look at this. You can't even see the icons. It's just a bunch of outlines, right? And then the Mayan theme is just a bunch of crazy details. Now let's take a look at the themes that we said was really good, right? Check out the rhino, like the strongest contrast against all the animals. Check out the buffalo, the strongest contrast. The buffalo and actually the wild icon right here. Strongest contrast in this whole set of icons. Bear Haas, look at the girls. Strong contrast. Girls, beer, and the guy, strong contrast from the rest of the icon set. Right? And everything here too. Strong contrast. The strongest icons all stands out vividly across the whole set. Okay? So 3 things. Flip your image horizontally, scale out, and always squint, and test your image using grayscale. Increase the contrast, check the legacy box to then increase the contrast to the max, and that'll tell you how well your icon set design looks like. Okay. All right, let's get to the fun part about slots: the background, the real dividers, the real strip, and icons. There is a mentality, an ethical mentality, a moral mentality when it comes to artists, is that we always want to create things that's our own. And so when we enter the industry, we tend to draw everything on our own. Like the backgrounds, we draw everything and we design everything ourselves. And the problem with that is that we slow down. And being a really good artist in the gaming industry is actually your speed of iteration. How fast can you get an idea out so that you can stimulate the team to have visual communication with the team? In Playster Orion, we focus on fast iterations, and because we want to communicate throughout this process. It's not that we don't trust you to design your own work, it's that we want to be able to pinpoint any ideas that can easily delineate off course and then bring you back on track as quick as possible. So why bother drawing something when some of the references that you have is already just as good, right? And this is what we call the kit bash or photo bashing process. When you start a slots game, an empty canvas is the most intimidating thing. So the best way to fill the mood and quickly engage yourself in brainstorming is to fill in the background. Now, don't go, this is just my recommendation, okay? Take it with a grain of salt, but take this advice and add it to your own process, because you will see a big difference as you progress through this technique. You'll be much faster, you'll be more fluid, you'll be open to new ideas, you're gonna absorb a lot of crazy new techniques from other artists, okay? Kit bashing or photo bashing means you just take that goddamn reference that you found online and paste it right in. Do some Gaussian blur, flip it horizontally, cut and paste different objects. Like let's say this is the Bubblina background where we're designing, okay? Here's a couple images from Disney, Pixar, images of oceans, like water stock images. This is done within 10 minutes, and that already kind of establishes the mood, right? If we were to do it the traditional way, where the artist's like drawing the sketches, drawing the sketch of the individual leaves and adding on rough colors, that would have taken hours, even half a day, right? In 10 minutes, we can probably do like 6 of these within an hour. Just really fast iterations to start the communication process. And this gets you warmed up. So you're not afraid of a white canvas, right? So background is really important in slots because it starts establishing the mood. And I want to show you some references of how we've done kit bash backgrounds in the past, okay? Here's a theme that we did for Wizard of Oz. Here's just a bunch of photos. Kit bash pasted together to stir up ideas, stir up conversation. This is done really quickly, 15 minutes, boom, a background is done. Then the team can gather together and talk and start having ideas and share more possibilities, right? And you can go through this process as fast as possible because you didn't spend a lot of time, you didn't spend an hour on it. Once the team approves, then you can go in and start adding in render details. Start painting on top of the examples, adding in your own photos, etc., to create a scenic background. I'm hearing Slack pings. Do you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's all good.
Okay, great. Here's another example of a photo bash background. Here. Okay, so as an example here, because there's a reels covering right here, so some of the stuff in the middle doesn't need to be nicely painted, but you can see it's just a photo pasted together really quickly to create a composition. Here are some more references of how this art industry and concept art industry utilize photos to quickly create concepts. Okay. Here are some photo references of a scenic German country in winter. We start pasting ideas in for the landscape, add in some mountains, some pine trees, and then you paint on top of your references till you get to the final stage. But then you can see here, everything is just photos overlaying each other, and then you paint on top of that to make it your own. But this is how you create realism. And how do we apply this to our slots, right? So we apply something called the blend option mode. And blend option is widely abused everywhere in the concept art industry because it's amazing. And why is it amazing? Is because that it's not like overlay or multiply where it changes the saturations or the color dodge of your image, right? It doesn't affect the pigment of the paint of your image, but it allows you to retain the texture involved. And you'll see this used everywhere. Like here's concept art from James Pegg, from Daniel Ducci, from Guild Wars to Halo. Like all these things that you see with these realistic looking textures, realistic looking photograph like smoke, they're all using the same technique here. They're taking photos. This is like the Duomo from like photos and distorting it, pasting it right in, and applying blend option. So where is this blend option and how do you use it properly? Blend option is down here in the FX section, blend options. And then you guys give this a test, okay? It's like create a simple background with like with simple color, then take a stone texture of some sort. Then once you go to blend option, you can hold down Alt and break these tags apart. And what this does is that if you break these tags apart and start dragging it along, it's telling the image or Photoshop that you want to erase all the shadow area of this image and let whatever is in the background comes through. So let's say I drag the shadow area here. It will let all the bright areas, which is the texture you want to keep, maintain on screen. You can do the reverse. You want to get rid of any bright areas. You just want to retain the dark areas of your texture. Then you slide this dial to the left, and will erase all the light area and keep all the dark areas of your work. Then afterwards, you just simply paint on top of it. Okay. Here's a reference, a quick demonstration of how we utilize that. And in one of the games that we worked on for Sega Slots, this is Golden Axe. So when we first start, super quick frames, and the background itself is from Diablo. We just blur it and kind of get the right mood and atmosphere. Then we start kit bashing different characters, different ideas, different models. Like this character itself was a kit bash of different faces. The eyes, the nose, the lips were all actually pasted from different actresses put together. The posture itself came from Baywatch, one of the girls from Baywatch. The sword was just pasted right in, a quick paint over, and voila, you have something to start the conversation with. Same thing when you've been assigned to a slots game, right? Don't spend time drawing a bunch of like sketches of little icons. Whatever references you find, paste it right in and start seeing if they work well together. And from there, then you can start adjusting your own design, like work things on top of it to create something your own, right? Create something original based off a photo. So now obviously there's like steps in between that we kind of missed, but it's to show you how the initial concept gets to the final stage using something still very relatively similar. Okay. So this is where I want to punctuate. Good artists copy and great artists steal. Now, we don't want to steal copyright, right? I'm not here to say steal someone's artwork and just put it right into our game. I'm trying to tell you guys to take the references that you found, put it on top, start kit bashing them together to what you need, and erase all the exhibit A, delete the layers, merge it together, then paint right on top of it. Because you're doing the same thing by referencing it on the side and drawing it on the right side of your screen, okay? You're just wasting your own time when you're trying to do the original method where you're just drawing it from your reference, right? Put things together. Now, this whole world, like the art industry, is actually just copying ideas from one thing to another and then making it 30% better, right? Let's look at Gundam and Star Wars. They just stole the inspiration from samurai, right? Samurai armor and samurai helmet design just is a direct ripoff of what Darth Vader is wearing. We can take a look at what's that game called? Overwatch, right? And Zenyatta is an inspiration from Diablo 3's monk, except it's just made into a robotic figure. Genji from Overwatch is, my God, it's like the most obvious copy from Metal Gear Solid. Like in terms of the style, like all the cuts and the collarbones, direct copy. Even a copy of the Evangelion's like shoulders and stuff. But no one remembers these things. Like once you combine everything, all the different references together and make your own, people won't be able to tell the difference unless they know exactly where that reference came from. Like Bastion's a copy from Miyazaki's Laputa, same idea with the birds and the animals. Farah is a copy from Patlabor and Birdman. Like just, wow, look at the shapes. And then our most iconic what's it called?
Warhammer.
Warhammer and Star Trek? No, not Star Trek.
StarCraft.
StarCraft, that's it. Wow, I'm getting old. Yeah, but you see here, they copied the silhouettes, the designs. It's a direct ripoff, right? But Blizzard made a more mass market appeal out of it using the same idea from from Warhammer. Okay, Avatar uses the same thing here. This is the floating islands using this Chinese mountainscape. Queen Amidala's costume is copied from a Mongolian wedding costume, exactly the same. And then some more Guild Wars art, like they were just unapologetic about it. This is the Tibetan monastery. They just pasted right in here. They didn't even paint over it. And then they found some, icebergs, some boats, and just paste it right in, do some color correction, paint on top of it, and voila, it's your work now. Okay. So we don't want to completely copy, but use this process, the kitbashing process, to help speed up your workflow. Right? How we're doing that right now is, for example, like Terawan and also Wisney is designing characters and icons. Instead of drawing and sketching out individual icons, we just tell them, hey, here's a couple images of characters and references of lantern, just paste them into the reel, start painting on top of it, right? And you can at least get a ton of option out within like an hour. Okay, so I want to talk about about the background. Go back to focus on the background, and let's go dive into the icons. When it comes to the background, even though we want to design really saturated colors, you don't want the backgrounds to be overly complex or overly saturated, because again, the main focus that you're trying to design here is to let the icons speak out loud. So when you're designing a background, just dial up the saturation in terms of the colors a little bit for the backgrounds and the reels. And so here's an example from a game from Yggdrasil. Valley of the Gods. The background colors are relatively low in saturation. They went a little bit here to the far left side. Okay, but everything else that's in the middle, the important icons, are still high saturation. This way, when players are seeing the icon spins, they don't get distracted going to the left or far or the right side of the reels. We had another example from Royal Trump Slots. Okay, here we designed the backgrounds super complicated. There's so much details in here and so much clutter that it's really hard for you to look at the screen in the middle. Like your eyes just keep getting attracted to the far left and far right side. All right, so keep your backgrounds simple. Keep the colors a little bit desaturated so the icons can sing. Okay, and we discussed about the different bonus backgrounds here. Now, let's go really quickly over to real frames and real strip. The background establishes the mood. The real frame and the real strip is the next thing you should quickly like plot down into your work, because they are kind of like your house. They're housing the reels. Okay, and you want to think about like building a house here. You have the silhouette, so the background is like the environment in which the house sits in. You have the house silhouette, the framing, and then you have the window framing that sits right inside, that's built right into the wall, right? They all complement one another. So when you're designing slots, quickly put down a real frame and then a real strip. Then the real strip will help punctuate the colors of your icons. Right? This should just take probably 30 minutes. Don't take too long at the first initial draft. Here's an example from Super Monkey Ball when we were working on this with Sega. We just quickly took some references from existing slots on the market, copy and paste it in, did some tidying up, but the general reference and idea came from these two games, and we made it our own, so it doesn't look like, it's a steal or anything. We simply made a homage, and we like to use that term a lot, like paying homage to our previous someone else's work, and made it our own really quickly, right? So quickly jog down the real frame and then the real strip, because they're gonna help you build the house within. Here's a couple of different real framing techniques. You'll see this is very common across the industry. The classic slots frame. Now this is a different mechanic. There's like an actual mechanical reel spinning in the middle. So the frames are kind of simple. They're kind of spaced out a little bit because they want the players to focus on the icons here. You also have design that are called the thin framing for the frames. So The frames out here are really thin. So it doesn't add a lot of weight because the content itself already has a lot of weight, right? So this is kind of the kind of things that's a fine balance is if you're designing game icons are heavy in flavor and then you design a really heavy flavored frame, then there's just flavor everywhere. Again, contrast comes in play depending on how you want to design the feeling of your slots games. Here we have more examples of thick and heavily ornated frame. Yeah, here's a vampire example here with really heavily ornated frame on the side. Chinese themes generally have really heavily ornated frames. Here are some themed ornate frames for Buffalo with the rope. And at Play Studios, we tend to follow this. We tend to do the high fidelity framing where the frame itself is part of the environment. Okay, so here's an example from Emerald 7. And then this on the right side is Hans Dojo from Yggdrasil, where the background, the middle ground is the frame itself in which our slots is built upon. And this adds a lot of fidelity, a lot of storytelling goes into this. Keystone Cop does the same thing, where the background and the real frame is just part of the garage where the cops reside in. And here's another one from Wei Fan, another art director from Play Studios, Berlin game, where he designed a whole island with a built-in frame. Okay. And then there are a different method where it's just no real frame or real strip. The background is designed in a way to help frame and support the icons that is floating and spinning on top. This is from Royal Charm Slots, one of the Merlin's theme, where the icons are simply floating. There's no real strip. What you're looking at here, these individual boxes, is drawn into the background, kind of like a wizard shelf full of goodies and wizards. Right? This is a very unique approach, a different technique. And then here are some common real strip design. The most default that you'll see for the real strip, which is this vertical strip behind the icons, is the simple strip. No crazy shapes and colors, no texture, just a simple gradient. And normally it's just light gradient spreading to the left and right side. And I would highly recommend just doing this when you're starting any slots. Just plot down a gradient like this and call it done for now. And then build your icons on top of it. Then as you're designing the icons, and just go back and take a look at the real strip, how you can add some colors and textures to kind of accommodate the theme, right? Here are some examples of textured strip. And you see here in this Elephant King example, how the real strip has these nice ornated textures that makes it feel like a tribal feel in Africa. Here's a Wizard of Oz theme where the real strip is the yellow gold road. And then some slots games don't even have real strip. They have something called a transparent real strip where you can see right through it. You can see right through the background, right? And you would do this when you want to sell the fiction, the landscape in which a slots is being built upon. So let's say this one for Goldfish on WMS. The real strip is non-existent. It's just a simple opacity layer, and you can see back into it, into the aquarium, because you want to sell the idea that there are these fishes just floating in the aquarium. Here's a pixie theme where they're trying to sell the setting of the pixies, so you can see right through it and the setting and locations of this beautiful fairy forest. No real strip. And here's an example of no reels at all. So there's no dividers. It's just there's icons just floating. No reels, no dividers. Icons just directly floating right on top of the background. But you gotta do this really like nicely, because you see how like they design the different landscape far on, like push it far to the left and right side, so there's content in the middle can stand out on their own without being cluttered. Okay, so we cover the background, the real frame, and the real dividers, real strips. Those are kind of like the foundation, the walls of your house. And let's go dive inside to the most important part, which is the icon design. And this is where I have the most fun. When designing icons, it's literally like a puzzle piece. You're trying to figure out how to tell someone what something is worth more when something's worth less without saying a word, without writing down the pay table, right? And that's the, like, within the first 3 seconds when someone enters your reel and see the game, they should already know like what is it they're chasing. So we break it down into 3 different tiers here. You have what we call the royals, the low icons, right? They're mostly just A, K, Q, J, 9, and 10. That's the general royals. Sometimes we call them, we will use card suites. Card suites are like this, where it's clover, spade, diamond, hearts. There are other ways to do low icons too, where it's just symbol royals, right? And I'll show you the example afterwards. Medium icons are what we call the storytellers, right? They describe the story. They describe like what the characters within the slots game is trying to achieve. For example, this is a Dracula theme, right? So Dracula theme, you think about, okay, so chalices, you think about the night lamp, you think about the rings and the amulet that they would wear, the characters wear. And then the high icons are the most thought after icons. They are the one that triggers the biggest win, right? It can be the wild icon or the bonus icons, but generally they're a lot more attractive and then take up more shapes. And you can already see the differences here. Royal icons are smaller, medium icons are a little bigger, and then the high icons are really big. And this brings us to what I call the 4 Ds of icon hierarchy. Dominance in size, dominance in color, dominance of angle, and dominance of detail. Think of this 4D as you're designing the icons. First, dominance in size. You can see in these examples here. Anything that's lowest paying will always be the smallest in size. And as you rise up in the tiers and hierarchy, they get a little bigger. And then the most attractive, the most highest paying icon is like super loud, really big in size. And sometimes they will do something called oversize, where they creep into other icons' space, right? So Elephant King, the royals, the card suite, super small, medium icons here with nice frame. And then the elephant just like, don't care, take up so much space here. Same thing with this interesting examples here. The wild icon takes up so much space here, dominance in its size. The buffalo example that we saw earlier, royals are simple. You have the medium icons and blah, boom, like buffalo, straight up in your face. Okay. Dominance of colors. So when we're designing colors, we usually reserve the highest contrast and the brightest, warmest color, the hottest color for the highest paying icons. And this is why you want to lay down your background, your real strip, and your real frame immediately, because your real frame color is gonna influence how you decide the color that's gonna go on top of the real strip. And here's an example from Wizard of Oz from Playtika, okay? The background of the real strip is green. So anything that's lowest paying should be green as well, because you want them to kind of blend in a little bit. Anything that's highest paying should be the complementary or the contrasting color to green. So let's see what they've done here. You notice the lowest paying of a kind is the scarecrow. So having a scarecrow being green, well, you can already see here, green on green, and you squint at it, he kind of blends in, which is fine because he's kind of like the most unimportant icon here, lowest paying. Same thing with the clover icon in the card suite. The card suite is lowest paying is the clover, and so green on green. The highest paying icon, let's say this one right here, the Golden Brick Road, look how sharp and like just squint at it. It just stares right at you when you squint, right? So what the artists here have done is they make gold the strongest contrast color, and then followed by reds. Okay, we want to take another example of Wizard of Oz, where in this case, it's the opposite, where let's say the real frame is gold. Here, we purposely made all the royals one color because we want to sell the colors of the characters. Again, dominance in terms of colors, right? And now in this example, the scarecrow is actually gold in all of his tones because the scarecrow is the lowest paying icon here, and we want him to push and blend into the real strip, and let the purple, which is direct complement. Sorry, I froze for a second there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm back.
Yeah, you
Okay.
are.
All right, so we want the purple and green. The purple, the strongest complementary colors to yellow to stand out the most, which is the highest icon here for the city of Oz, right? And then here, dominance in size, right? Look at the wizard just standing out, nice and loud. Okay. Dominance of detail. When it comes to the lowest paying icon, we generally don't pay a lot of attention to them because we want the highest paying icon to get a ton of details. And here are some examples here. So let's say Lantern Festival. The highest paying icon here is, just funny enough, the largest icon here. And they have the most amount of detail here in terms of the rendering, in terms of the designs. And then for the medium icon, just simple rendering on the royals. Here's an example of a game I did for Game of Life. Right? The low icons, the cat and dog peg, symbols in rendering, not a lot of details to them. And then the highest icon, which would be the Game of Life logo, it's got these really exquisite framing, lots of detail, lots of ornateness. The highest paying medium icon, the plain, tons of details, tons of like sharp colors. And it's even got like more details along the framing here, just to help punch up the importance of this icon compared to the rest of the other icon in terms of hierarchy. So that's dominance in details. Now, this is a really fun one. Dominance of angle. When you're designing icons and there's tons of characters or even tons of different medium icons, right? You want to start thinking about the angle in which they're pointing at. The highest paying icon will always be facing at you. Let's say you have to design a slots game with 5 or 6 characters. How do you make them all different? This is how we do it in the industry. We give them different quarter views or profile views, and no one should ever be looking at the slots, at the player, unless they are the highest paying character or highest paying icon, right? Here's an example from one of the Mustang game. The eagle pointing top right, it's not looking at you. Wolf pointing bottom left, not looking at you. The bear pointing bottom right, not looking at you. And then the Mustang, this is the one that's charging forward, is the one that's actually looking at you. All right, same thing with the rhino game. Deliberately, they made the ape, the direction read go bottom right. Directional read for the cougar goes top right, not looking at you. Bottom left for I think this is the eagle or a badger. Bottom left, and then the alligators goes top left. Right? You see how they try to differentiate the different angles in which you can observe these characters, and then look at the rhino straight up facing you, giving you full attention. You don't always have to mix up different angles, right? Here in the Monopoly game, they do something differently. They group all the same paying icons in the same angle. Here we see the car, bottom left. The battleship, bottom left. The dog, bottom left. Car again, bottom left. And then voila, the three things are different. The Mr. Monopoly, top right, direct contrast to the direction in which all the other icons are. And then his hat pointing to kind of dead center to the right. And of course, the highest paying symbol, the wheel feature, straight up in your face. If it had eyes, it would probably be looking at you. Okay, here's another character example. Here, we can tell the men, largest in size, largest in color dominance, largest in detail dominance, and he's also looking straight at you. That is his importance. So he is the largest paying icon just from initial read. And every other icons that supplements this theme is pointing away. They shouldn't actually have made the girls look at you, but you can tell they're facing away, right? So they have different payouts here, lower than the men, And this girl is probably the highest paying middle icon because she's looking straight at you. Whereas this is looking to the left, this is looking to the right. Same thing applies when you're designing different medium icons that are objects. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to the examples here for the golden axe. Every different objects here have different angle and directional read, right? So the bracelet is technically from top right to pointing bottom left. The sword pointing bottom right. The bracelet going bottom left. The angle of this going bottom left. This is pointing top right, right? We vary the different angles in which the character sits in and let the main thing point out, like looking right at you, which is the girl. Okay. Dominance in size, dominance in color, dominance in detail, and dominance angle. As you're working on the different icons, constantly remember that and make sure you're checking your hierarchy as you're progressing from royal, medium to high icons, okay? Here are some design thinking and techniques when you're designing icons. Again, like I said before, it is like a seesaw. There's balance to everything. If you change one icon in terms of its framing or its colors, it's going to directly influence another icon. Let's say the Wizard of Oz example earlier, when we have a green reel strip, and then you change one of the icons from red to green. Immediately you change the hierarchy and its dominance because green on green blends in. The red will then shift its dominance to something else, make it more important, right? So this is where the fine tweaking comes in. And I like this picture a lot because this is exactly how slots work when you're designing icons. You're constantly thinking about contrast. Does the icon read on the reel? Does the icon contrast in terms of size and dominance? Is it clear to one another that which is the highest paying one? So when we come to the colors itself, we always want to make sure color hierarchy and saturation is the best that we can when we tone it to this in terms of saturation band. And this is what I call the hotspot for each of the icons. You can see here in the examples of these characters, there's a hotspot band right in the middle where they use a color dot or an overlay to punch up the saturations. And sometimes in slots, other slots icon, I would see that the hotspot is all along the outside, which doesn't make it very appealing. So this is something we want to watch out for when we're designing the colors. Here's an example where the colors are all on the outside in terms of saturation, but then the saturation in the middle is missing. So then bring the eyes all the way to the outside instead of focusing in the middle area. So what you want to do is create a saturation band, the hotspot in the middle of the icon. Make it really saturated, and then on the outside, just a little bit less saturated, so you can focus on the main icon. Something to think about when you're designing the icon composition, right? Each of the icons has a canvas size. So let's say this is a square here. But here are some examples that are bad in terms of positioning, composition, where it wastes a lot of space. We want each of the icons that you design to take up as much space as possible, but do it smartly, thinking about the directional read. This Aladdin magic carpet cuts the image right in half, and there's so much space on the top and bottom. So the way we changed it to give it a more flair is to take to kind of wrap it around and give it this diagonal read, so it takes up more space, properly positioned within this icon space. Here's some example of the Aladdin genie's lamp. The bad example below is where they kind of crunched the design. So it's really slanted and diagonal. And look at how much wasted space there is on the top left and bottom right. So when they stack on the reel, they will feel really sparse and empty. Whereas these examples here are beautiful. Like they take up a lot of space, just the right amount of space, right? Not touching the edges. And they tell a better story. It feels more majestic and more prominent than these top-down angles here with lots of wasted space around the corner. So consider your silhouette and consider your composition when you're designing your icons. The thing that will always make an icon look really good, it just glows and rim light, right? There is no shortage of rim light in the slots game. The minute you have like a design down, just add a rim light. It's gonna look amazing. So the rim light is stuff like this. Just add a rim light to the very outside edge. Think about the ambient lighting, like which angle most of the rim lights are coming from, and just add it to that side, that direction. And it would immediately help your image pop out from the real strip. Okay, you can see that over here in these other higher icons, rim lights. Even these low icons here have rim lights. Rim lights. Rim lights on the characters. Rim lights everywhere, right? Because they're trying to break the separation of depth to bring the important things forward. And again, when we're talking about characters and like painting characters for slots, we want to think about CoverGirl and also Vogue magazine, where there's lights literally everywhere. Like there's lights at the front, lights at the top, lights at the back, lights at the side, lights everywhere. And your shadow should not be very strong. It shouldn't be black. It shouldn't cover the face in half because you want the whole face to dominate the icon space, right? Here's some great example of evenly lit faces. Beautifully evenly lit faces. The shadow is only a couple areas that help accentuate the forms, like the silhouette of the face has dark shadows, but nothing on the actual feature itself, right? Same thing here, really nicely lit rim light, a cast light into the shadow. You see that there's no dark, crazy shadow around the nose or the eyes. You can see this face really clearly. Vogue does it really well, adding rim light to the side to help the silhouette pop out, right? No crazy dark shadow on the faces. You do not want this, no Rembrandt for slots, right? Where half their face or quarter of their face is covered in shadow, because it adds too much mystery. It doesn't feel welcoming, right? They just feel dim and creepy, right? This avoid at all cost. Okay, that's the icons for some of the fine balances. I want to show you a really quick case example of the Bubblina theme when we're working for RCS, how we solve some of the icon readability. And here is what I was saying earlier, is that you want to watch out on how the color lays on top of each other. So one of the high icons for Bubblina is a blue icon, but our entire background and real strip is blue. So when we squint at it, this icon kind of blend in. So what can we do to solve that? We use curves to quickly adjust the brightness and contrast to pop out more teals, more yellow into the fish icon, so that when we squint at the result here, it stands out more than the dark blue in the background in the real strip. Curve is your friend too when you're trying to do a quick adjustment for icon colors and saturation. A really quick note on designing tall icons, because we have a lot of these in Play Studio games. Tall icons are icons that take up 3 sizes. So let's say this Rio is 3 down and 5 across. A tall icon is an icon that just takes up 1 whole vertical Rios. But often in times, I see when people are designing tall icons is that they're not thinking about the functionality of the tall icon. A tall icon doesn't just pay out by its whole size. It's actually 3 icons blend into 1 vertical one. So each of the 3 spaces has to have interest. It has to have some kind of things to make player like know that this is an important icon when it lands in different position, right? So let's take a look at example 1, 2 versus 3, which is a lot better. So number 1, let's say we just look at the face here. Yeah, that's a great icon. But then look at the middle area. It's like, oh, crotch and a leg. And there's no interesting things here. You can't add any ornaments to make this area look interesting. And then you look at the bottom of the legs, like just a shin on the top right corner. And over here, it's all grass, right? That's not an evenly distributed interest level. Here in number 2, similar problems. The face is nice and focused, that's fine. And in the body, just, oh, okay, just body and crotch. And then bottom is a log. Now, imagine if this icon lands at the very top. All you would see is just a log and a foot, right? And here, this is much more distributed. You have face near the top, a focus on the body near the bottom, and then a close-up leg. We can add some ornaments and stuff to the leg so that it creates a lot more interest when it lands. So when you're designing vertical or tall icons, you want to think about how it fits on the reel when it lands in different oppositions. Here's a recent examples for wild. Okay, when we are assigned to do a tall wild icon, at first we design wild right in the middle. But then what happens to the top? It's empty. What happens to the bottom? It's also empty, right? So then you only have one tall in the middle, wild described here in the middle. So imagine if this reel is spinning and you land an icon like this, where the top is just at the very bottom space here. What is the icon? Nobody knows, right? So the fixed version is like this. So while taking the whole word, taking up the entire vertical space. So if we cut out this icon here and if it lands near the bottom, hey, at least we get it. It's a W. Oh, I know, I could have gotten a wild here. Okay, things to consider when designing a tall wild. Here's another common example, conflict in reals versus color, right? So depending on situation, sometimes we just have so much colors that we can't really get away from. Then leave the lowest paying colors to the same color as the reel. But here, you don't want any high icons or any icons that are important to blend into the reel color, where the reel is blue and the icon is also blue. Okay. Wild icons are the Joker icons of the industry. They connect the dots. They make everything, in case you missed, let's say, 2 positions of the icons, the wild icons like the Joker, it will connect everything to make it match 3. Or if you have wilds at the back and you have match 4, it will become a match 5 at the very back, right? This wild icons has always been really challenging for the team because it is a text that's often in times that you have to distort or stretch so that it fits the whole icon space. Same thinking when it comes to a Aladdin lamp, where you don't want the wild icon to just sit right in the middle and lots of wasted space at the top and bottom. Figure out creative ways, slant the wilds, make one word bigger, other words smaller, so that the wild word can take up the whole icon space as much as possible, right? And then there's just examples of the different ways that we can design wilds. And this is follow the game designers lead on this, because there's sticky wilds, there's exploding wilds, there's horizontal wild, vertical wilds, random wilds, all the crazy wilds that you can think of in gameplay. Okay? But just remember the one rule, the wild word should take up the whole canvas space of the icon. Okay. And then what we have left, just really two more important things, is the icon framing. And then we're done after we talk about the royals, okay? Here are some examples of icon framing. And this is kind of the part of the puzzle piece when you're trying to design icons itself. Sometimes when you're designing middle icons, you need to have a frame, because just to help differentiate it from one another, the game design could call for that because it needs to stack on top of each other, or there's different functionality to the icons, right? So when you're designing icons, you have to be flexible. Sometimes you design icons with no frames, where it's something like this, no frame icon. This is a full frame icon where there's a frame around it and it takes up most of the icon space. And if there is a couple of full frame icon, then each of the frame needs to differentiate from one another. So for example, this bonus icon has a frame and the corners are really ornated with colors. The wild icon, golden axe icon, is a bit less paying than the bonus icon. So this frame doesn't have other colors. It just has the simple gold ornate ornaments. Oversized framing. Okay, we usually use this for jackpots, the highest paying one, or bonus icon and trigger icons that players are chasing for. And you can see they just completely dominate the space and they creep into other icons' space. Imagine seeing this as it's spinning. It's so beautiful and large and majestic, like this large green thing just spinning right by. It gets players excited, right? Here, this fish tank, obviously the largest icon because it just creeps out on the side and from the top. Other examples are how you turn a regular icon into an oversized icon. You simply think of the canvas size of the icon and you creep out designs on the top and at the bottom. Okay. Sometimes just sticking the head out of the frame helps a lot just to sell the dominance of the character. Here are some examples of a character frame where we stick out the character's head a little bit. Let's give it some more dominance. Here's the Mustang sticking out the head from the frame. And here are a bunch of more other examples where you stick out the hat, the head, and a little bit of the frame outside to help differentiate from the other icons. So be flexible when you're designing your icons. It doesn't have to be an icon without frame. It doesn't have to be an icon in the box, right? The frame itself can be unique. You can design frame like this. If the icons stack on top of each other, they can be a curved frame. And when they stack on top of each other, they match beautifully to one another. And of course, like I said before, it doesn't have to be a square, right? You can think of a diagonal rectangle with a nice oval shape in the middle for free game. The imagination is all up to you, right? Just remember though, try to take up as much compositional space for in terms of the icon canvas size as much as possible. Here are some examples of no frame icons. No framing here. Classic games generally don't have any frames. These icons have no frames. And there are times where icons calls for design backers because we want to group them into the same series or similar hierarchies. Here's an example from Keystone Cops. If we didn't have these icon backers, like these ticket plates here, these icons would be too complicated to read. Their silhouette is a lot detailed. They're kind of everywhere. They point in different directions. So the artist here added this plate to help group all these middle icons into one category. So right away, when you see this, you know, okay, they're the same group, they pay out the same thing. Fudala, another popular Asian game, all the medium icons to help them separate from the royals have a circular frame right behind there. Doesn't touch the edges, just a little bit, give it some more headroom on the side. We can also create frames using what we call a back glow, right? So in this example of an ocean theme, instead of just a character with the sharp animals with the sharp silhouette, you add a colorful back glow to help give it some more dominance and also to group them into the same category. And oftentimes when we think about framing, that we have to we think that, oh, we have to take up the whole canvas space, but you don't have to. You can create miniature framing so that there's rooms on the top and bottom to help separate the readabilities. So here are some examples where instead of these frames taking up the whole canvas size, touching edge to edge, they made it a little smaller, and then they let the character stick out from the frame, the miniature frame. Here's another example from Playtika's Goldfish theme, miniature frame, helping frame these three fishes in the same category versus the low icons here. So you can immediately see, okay, the turtle and the starfish are obviously lower paying than these high fishes. The another thing that we worked on, the Super Monkey Ball theme here, we use the same technique, a miniature frame, so that it's not touching edge to edge. So there's some readability to the real strip and some contrast to help break each of the vertical columns and make the icon's silhouette easier to read. Okay, so be flexible when you're designing the medium icons. There's different techniques to do it. You don't always need to have a frame. You don't always need to just have a no frame at all. You can create interesting interesting shapes to help group them into the hierarchy that's desirable for that theme. And last, the minor icon, okay? Minor icons are what we call low icons, or we call them royals. And that depends on the game design itself. Whenever I'm designing a slots game, I always ask the game designer, how many low icons are there? If they tell you 4, usually a good idea is to go with card suites. Card suites are these: club, spade, diamond, and hearts. Because right away, there are already 4 of them. Now, if they say, oh, we want like 5 to 6 low icons, you have 2 other options. You either go with the standard royals, which is your A, K, Q, J, 9, or 10, or you can suggest picture lows. Picture minors are minors, like as many as you need. It could be 5 or 6, but instead of using card suites or AKQJ 9, 10, they're actually pictures. And these are also interesting ways to sell the theme, right? So in this Super Monkey Ball example, the royals, the low paying icons, are the fruits. There's like 5, 6 of them, but you don't see the A or a J or the spades using low icons to describe the lowest paying ones here as well for Goldfish. Goldfish, the low icons are these supplementary story icons. And here from another Dracula theme here, their low icons are story icons. Story icons, like things that help supplement the story here. They don't have AKQJ or spade. Okay, so I just want to show you guys some really quick examples of the different royals that we use. The standard royals are these royals with decorations. So A, K, Q, J, 9, and 10. J will have something around the end of the tail. A will have something in the middle, and Q and K will have something near the tail and the head of the K. Here's another permutations of that same design. Or you can keep it very simple without any ornamentations at all. AKQJ with no crazy little symbols. You can design your text to match the theme. So AKQJ here for the Asian themes, they all kind of look Asian. There's some kind of ornamentations in there to give it the Asian theme required. Here the Egyptian theme, AKQJ 9 and 10 with some Egyptian ornamentation. The Kong game in Pop did a really good job. Their royals have all these different ornaments on there to sell the mood. And here's some other permutations of the original AKQJ with those little designs. Okay. And this would be the standard card suite. The card suits, just very simple. Not a lot of crazy ornaments. They look like jewels. And you would use them. You would use these cards. I would generally use the card suites if the designer says, okay, there's 4, and also you want to have a lot of crazy detailed icons, right? You don't want to use royals when you have a lot of icons that you want their players' attention to focus on the icons. Imagine if this theme, Berhas, they use royals such as the AKQJ. It's just too much details everywhere. Right. So to bring the contrast and the dominance, different dominance in terms of hierarchy, the decision to use card suites are more aligned here. So you can focus on the more important, more detailed icons. And then decorated card suites, you can create a different design. It doesn't have to be just a simple line and a jewel shape. You can create them to match the theme of your slots game. Okay, and lastly, sometimes when your slots games has too much color, too much detail, and when you're spinning and you can't really notice the colors of the high important icon, you can then resort to what we call the monotone royals. The monotone royals are something like this, where they kind of just blend into the real strip because their payout is so low that people don't really care. They're just fillers. So Wizard of Oz, golden royals on golden reels. This witch example, just all the same color for the lows, the purples, because they're just trying to push it back into the same category. No one cares because they don't pay out really well. And in Shinobi slots here, We did something very similar, monotone royals, but at least give the royals a little bit of a color outline to try to differentiate them. But the focus here is to help sell the colorful image of these higher icons. Same thing, the ultimate result of Super Monkey Ball, we end up with monotone royals so that we can let player focus on the characters and also these large bonus symbols. Okay, and that wraps up the masterclass for slots. We covered everything you need to know, from the general philosophy, who the demographics are, to how you should design the saturations, the colors, the anatomy, understanding the process itself, and also the real frame backgrounds, compositions, and the most important icons that you need to think about. I know you guys will have a lot of questions, so don't be afraid to reach out to me like after this class and throughout as we work together. Okay. Is there any questions?
Yes. It's lots of information and lots is new to me. So will this board be available later on to dive in?
Yeah, Alon is in fact recording this, and we're gonna do some edits after this call to make sure this is presentable, and then we'll share with everyone here. Okay.
Awesome. Cool. Nice. Great presentation, by the way, and I love your enthusiasm when you was talking about it.
Thanks. I absolutely love this industry. So like to me, this is like my dream job. Okay, that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for like the hour and a half.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Daniel. This was amazing.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, we're gonna end this meeting now. And as Daniel mentioned, this was recorded. We'll edit it down and upload it to all public channels for everyone to view.
Sure.
All right.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
See ya.
See ya.